I hope, enough beer yesterday evening to start with a first look, actually an update on LibreCores. And you might have seen LibreCores, kind of, it's over there, and there are stickers at the front. So if you have not heard of LibreCores before, and that's not working, oh. Yeah. Why do we do LibreCores? What actually is LibreCores? So kind of the core of LibreCores is sharing things. And sharing things is obviously a kind of bit too broad. We're looking at, first of all, sharing code in digital hardware designs, meaning essentially mostly Verilog code, VHDL code, projects that are in this space, IP cores, as they're commonly called, which kind of is a name that is kind of conflicting with the idea of open source IP cores, kind of. So it's always hard to find a good name for that. But code is just one thing. I think we're all here and we recognize that code is, I think, the output, but we need more. We need, first of all, to engage people to come together, to build new cores, to build new projects, to get involved in existing projects, because at some point in time you're kind of done in your basement writing your own code, and you actually want to get it out in the world and want people to participate and help improve and actually get back to you and say, well, this actually works or this doesn't work, which always is a kind of interesting feedback to get. Into that area goes also, of course, the reuse part. We see so many, and I'm just going to call them IP cores for now, pieces of hardware that have been written over and over again. I think there is 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 UART cores out there, everybody reinventing the wheel there, and everybody kind of fixing bugs in one core and then using another one and finding the same bugs there again. So reuse is that what made the industry really strong with IP that you can buy, that you actually know that works. But in the open source world, in the open source IP world, I think we still have to go a long way in this regard to make this reuse easier and more feasible. So that's one of the plans of goals of LibreCores. And in the end, getting people involved in hardware design, in digital hardware design, turns out to be rather tricky. We have university courses on sometimes digital design, but it's kind of, you don't find that many people that know Verilog or VHDL or any hardware description language. Then you know people that know Python or Node.js or whatever you have out there as other programming opportunities. So I think we have to still go a long way of teaching people how to get involved in this community, how to get started with hardware design, with HDL design, not just for the benefit of our open source projects, but also, and here's a lot of industry here, for the benefit of the industry in total. So you might say, okay, that all sounds nice, but isn't there already this other side out there? That's OpenCourseorg. And I guess I used that picture before, and I'm just using it again because it displays the state of OpenCourse pretty well. It's kind of, that's OpenCourse, the keyboard down there. And unfortunately, we can't do anything with it because there's kind of a cat sleeping on top of it. That's a bad state because this cat doesn't want to be woken up. At the same time, you can't do anything. So that's unfortunately the state of OpenCourse. So it's kind of abandoned, and we weren't able to convince the people behind OpenCourse to actually improve it, get it into the 21st century. So we were kind of required to act regretfully, unfortunately, because it all takes time. And that's why we set out LibreCores, and we will have a couple screenshots and things later on for those of you that have never heard of it. Now let's actually move on to what we have achieved since last time. Stefan already mentioned last year at ORConf, so pretty much exactly a year ago, we first launched LibreCores. So since then, we did a lot of stability work. So site is up and running. It works pretty nicely. We have some initial documentation content, which is going in this direction of learning and making sure that people know how to get engaged. There is still room for way more, but we got at least some initial questions answered, or at least partially answered. So we did a piece of licensing, a piece of on how to publish code, and a piece of hosting. We have Planet LibreCores, which turns out to be a rather interesting resource. So this is, I always feel this is kind of a bit from the last decade, but it's still the best way probably to interact and see what's going on, apart from those 140 character Twitter messages. It's a blog planet, so it aggregates blog posts from different parts of the community. I see a couple of people around here that actually have their blog on there. There's an RSS feed that you can just subscribe to, or you just go to the website and see kind of a mixed bag of news that you can just scroll through. Blog posts, be a bit more technical, be the release announcements, to get essentially a feeling of what's going on in the community right now. If you have a blog that's not on there, let us know, and we can add that as well. So that's how it looks. Just kind of, we see here, we have blog post from the RISC-V Foundation that was taken last year. We have one blog post from the gentleman over there, and we have one low-risk blog post, which was done by Alex. So kind of, you see already the community is represented there, and just to get you up to date what's currently going on. Last bullet point right here, and that's the main one and the one that we invested most time into it, is our project repository, which is representing essentially an IP core repository, if you want it like that. To get a first impression how that looks, so we have, okay, there's the project. We take the README file. You can enter that manually, or we take that out of your GitHub repository or Git repository, any type of Git repository. So, and we also take out the license, and we now have kind of initial datasheet things, which kind of, you go project side, you have the repository, you have overview of the license, things like that. So just the basic information that you need to know. What is this project all about? Is this something I could use at a first sight? Well, just a link to the project website is obviously not a good way of giving you an impression, is that project usable at all or not? So we invested a huge amount of time, and that's what mostly a Google Summer of Code student was doing over the summer, last 3 months, to get more pieces of information out of a project repository and out of the larger ecosystem that we have the project in. So what we have there is, for example, you get when was this project last updated, is there released versions, what languages is written in, there's kind of number of open issues, forks, watchers, stars, and you see the number of contributors, and you also see the activity, which is essentially the commit activity in this project over the last year. This goes also a bit in more detail. So, for example, you see the last releases, you see the number of contributors, you see the language, for example, and you see the number of commits here, and some other things. All that is meant to give you a kind of a quick overview. If I'm new to this project, can I use this IP core? Can I use this core? Is it kind of not actively maintained anymore? Is there a lot of activity going on? Is it just a single maintainer, so essentially you have a buzz factor of 1? Or is there a kind of large community out there? So this obviously doesn't judge the quality of a project in sufficient ways, but it's there to give you a first impression that says, okay, this looks rather interesting to me, so let's dig deeper, or okay, this looks abandoned right away, let's move to something else. What we also tried, and you see that up here is kind of the star rating. So we tried to combine many of the things you see around here and put them into a rather unsophisticated formula to kind of represent the bit of best practices, or a bit of experience, how a well-maintained active project could look like. This is obviously a heuristic and not necessarily the best one. So this is the kind of the first one we came up with. This needs a lot of tuning. So if you figure out that you have your project on LibreCourse and it's rated really badly, or it's rated really good and it shouldn't be, then just let us know. There's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done. And on this kind of stage, huge thanks to Amitosh, who unfortunately cannot be here today since he's writing exams in India. So he did a lot of that work, and he did a tremendous amount of great work there. And yeah, we definitely should be very thankful to him. So that's essentially the state where we are right now. What's always interesting to look at is what's coming up next. And of course, apart from bug fixing and all those things, we have two major areas that we want to look at. One is improved discoverability. So for example, we have seen there's dozens of different UART cores out there, things like that. There needs to be a way to group them together, kind of to get a fair comparison within one group. So we're looking at adding categories, and one example that does that pretty well is the Python software index PyPy, which kind of gives you this nice overview of categories, which are also hierarchical, and you can essentially browse yourself through cores. And this is automatically more or less generated, and we also want to have a look at kind of more manually generated content, so projects of the month, things like that. That's coming up. We have seen in the last iteration a lot of metrics that are automatically generated out of a repository or out of the things that happen at GitHub. Machines can do only some things. There is humans that are always required, and that's a good thing. So what we will have a look at is metrics that are coming from user-contributed contents. So this can go in various levels of effort. So we are looking into kind of providing people the opportunity to write kind of full-fledged reviews, kind of like Amazon product reviews, a couple paragraphs, things like that. But that's obviously a lot of effort for you to write. So there is other ways to involve and kind of say, I like this or didn't like this, I've taped this out, or I'm using that, things like that. And another inspiration that is very nice is kind of this is from Puppet Forge. Don't care if you've never heard of it, but it's kind of, there's just a couple questions that you can just click on, and gives you a quick way of feedback, which then can be kind of incorporated into the whole project metrics. One last thing that would be very, very nice and is unfortunately rather hard to do is usage numbers. And I guess that's the ultimate question always, is this stuff used at all? And in the hardware world, we know it's kind of very hard to get those usage numbers, because people take the software they downloaded, kind of take the zip file, put it into their repository, and it's never seen again. So in the more recent ways, we have in NPM and Node.js and things like that, you see download stats pretty well. You see kind of dependencies, how many other cores depend on that one. That's all information that's unfortunately not available in our world right now. So you can go for a number of downloads, which is a very weird and not very helpful proxy metric. You can go for a number of installations, and I think that doesn't exist. You can go for a number of dependent projects, which is a great metric, but as I said, kind of we don't have that information available yet. So we look at how can we get this information and how can we improve the state that we're in right now. And what we see in all those NPMs and other things, they have kind of more or less standardized dependency management. In Node.js, you have your one dependency manager. In Python, you have the other one. And in PHP, you have Composer for now. So that's always kind of a very nice way of figuring that out. We don't have that in hardware yet. So there's a lot of homegrown solutions for that. Everybody has their own way of doing Git sub modules or including tickle scripts that get stuff from some repositories. But the problem there is, of course, there's no way to do kind of catch all those special cases automatically. So one project that I'm involved in, and always all of us sitting here, that might be the one, or one of the solutions, there doesn't need to be one, there can be multiple, is to look into FuseSock core files and parsing them out to use that information. Let's see how far that goes. Also interesting question is if we can leverage more of the IP exact information that people might have put into a repository as well, if they put a kind of IP exact file, a description file into there, if we can use that and take more information out of that. So there is a lot of things to be explored here, and if you have any ideas or the solution, get in touch with us. This is definitely a kind of a missing component here. Yeah, tech is nice, but it's useless unless you have content, and that's what we're kind of focusing on from now on until the Christmas time. That's what we kind of put ourselves as a goal, to actively approach people to get their projects on LibreCores. We have a lot of things that are still on OpenCourse. They're partly dead, some of them are not that dead. So we actually encourage everybody in the room here, of course, but then we will also actively reach out to others to make use of the new site, the new features that we have added, and get their stuff in there. There is no need to remove it from somewhere else. So this is not kind of the one and only silo that you go into, but it's a good opportunity to get your projects made visible to the world and, yeah, visible. So, don't sit only in your basement. And I love this cat, so I have to put it in there. And I also love those cats. They also have to be in there. Add your projects, if you have them, to LibreCores today. Celebrate like those cats. Right there, get a glass of whatever your favorite liquor or non-liquor is as soon as you've done that, and then you're going to be relieved for the social event in the evening today. Of course, this is not a one-man show. This is something that looks for your input, and we have done a lot of things to make it easier to get started. There's a mailing list. There is we've come to the 21st century. There's this Gitter chat, which is like IRC 2.0 something, but it's actually rather nice. There is this website that actually has all communication options, also shows you how to get started with a project, set it up on your own machine, and there is issue tracker and code all open on GitHub. So we make sure that whenever we go out of business for whatever reason, we never have this open core situation again. The code is all there. It just can be taken on by somebody else, so we don't die the same death again. That's it from my side. When there are any questions, let me know. And otherwise, there's a couple communication details there. Write me an email, and then we get in contact. Thanks. Question over there, yes? I guess you need to wait for the mic.
Yeah, so...
It's not on the PA, it's just on the recording.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay, so the question is about things that are now on OpenCourse, how to move them. Because I also branched one of them, and I took some patches from other projects. But I don't have the ambition to become a dictator for life, a benevolent dictator for life for that project. So if I put that on your LibreCores, then I'm the contact person. But so I'm kind of, because after my project dies, probably I won't be maintaining that core anymore. But so do you have an idea how to continue with it?
Yeah. So it's a question, is kind of forked project, what to do with that. Of course, that's a tricky question that not just is kind of problematic for LibreCores, is always the problem. And essentially the problem you have right there is when kind of are you sufficiently confident in the code to say, okay, this is kind of a fork of mine and I'm kind of willing to be whatever that means, maintainer of that fork, then just go ahead, push it there. If you have the chance to get in contact with the original author, that would be even better. Then you kind of are able to join forces there. But I guess that there's no right answer. I would love, in the end, kind of there's nothing, kind of that there's no things that come entangled with putting your stuff on LibreCores. You can always remove it again and just say, kind of, for now, I'm sufficiently happy with that. I'm did some changes, I put some work into that. I want the world to see actually that, and just put it out there, actually make sure that your changes get seen, and if somebody else wants to use it, go ahead, and you also can state clearly kind of I don't have the time to do bug triaging every day.
So we will see me popping up on LibreCores in the near future, I think so.
Perfect, thank you. Question up here and down there.
You described browsing in categories as something that was coming. Is there a way to browse at the moment? Is there a way to browse and see what projects are on LibreCores right now?
There is a search right now, and there is a full list of projects.
Okay.
So that's kind of the...
I was trying to find the list, and maybe you can point me to it afterwards.
Yes. Actually, the easiest way to get to the list, just enter an empty search and you get the list.
Okay, thank you.
But there's also a link there. I guess we had a question over there and then there.
Yeah, I guess it was...
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's kind of a follow-on from that. Are you planning on adding keyword metadata to them? So I just went on the site for the first time and searched for CPU, and it came up with a bunch of things that had CPU in the name, but not other CPUs that I found when I searched for RISC, for instance.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely coming. So the area of search and discoverability is kind of a rough state right now. So you either get the full list or you get a very unsophisticated search. So that's where areas where we're doing a lot of work actually. And so yeah, so things like text or those categories will definitely come up, yes. So.
Is there a plan to commercialize the projects that will be uploaded?
So is there a plan to commercialize the projects that were uploaded?
As in, so users who uploaded, they can, and they have some, do they have some incentive to upload, some monetary incentive?
So the limitation of the page is that we only allow open source IP cores, because that's the whole goal of that. There is other sites that are there for paid IP cores, just put it on whatever Xilinx listing or what you're looking into. So the limitation is intentionally open source IP. You can, of course, make money out of open source IP in the traditional ways, but that's kind of not something we're looking into right now, kind of entangling that. So in the end, it's just like, yeah, Piper and other repositories as well. It's open source IP cores, and there's no monetary incentive from our side other than, no, from our side there's none. The incentive from your side to put it up there could be, of course, to get new customers, to show the world that kind of the code you do is great, and get then kind of follow-up things or whatever, kind of just the regular way of open source blocks that work. Answering your question? Or yeah, Richard.
So I started uploading some of the course last year, and I had a lot of troubles changing what I've entered initially. I made a few typos, and I was unable to fix those. Did you update the user interface or the or how to maintain your projects?
Yes. So there were a lot of bugs in the initial one, actually kind of disallowing you some form validation that went wrong. Most of them should be fixed, or at least all the ones I know of should be fixed. If you find anything else, just talk to me and we can get them fixed. So that's definitely a bug then that I don't know of yet.
Okay, yeah, I was hoping you would actually show a few slides on how to use it and
we can, do we have time? Yeah, okay, we can, that's a good idea. Olaf just suggested we can do it as a lightning talk, how to add your project. So I'll prepare that and we'll do that kind of after, around probably 4 o'clock when we have some time for lightning talk.
Okay.
Is that okay? Question, just okay?
Yeah, I saw a slide where you said the number of downloads and number of usage.
Yes.
What are your plans to increase the number of usage? That's the first question. And second question, if I help you increasing the number of usage, will you put my link on your website?
So I'm not in a position to increase the usage of your core, essentially. It's kind of, I'm not doing the marketing for arbitrary number of projects. Essentially, that's up to you to kind of make sure that you get the word out of there. What we provide is kind of a easy way for people to get started, the kind of this one-stop place to find other IP cores. So yeah, I guess that's okay.
Thank you.
There's another question up here. Maybe. Okay. Oh, here.
Yeah, I guess it was just about licensing. So I noticed that I've just had a look at a couple of projects, and they're all different licenses. Is it, so I guess with software, it's kind of clear-cut that what defines a kind of derivative work. If you're just including a bunch of different cores, are there likely to be license issues even from within just LibreCores, or it's pretty too general? I guess I've not used other people's cores before in my projects, but if you, what counts as a derivative of, say, a GPL work if you're trying to mash it up with a, if you're just keeping the core intact, is that a derivative or is it a?
So the question was about kind of how can you essentially also be sure in kind of the legal implications that come with the license that people attach to the projects that are on the site. So for example, would I be a derivative work if I use some of the cores, if the core is licensed GPL? So what we try to do here is essentially just provide you the information what this core is licensed under. The ultimate decision if that core is usable in your legal framework that you're in or in your kind of company policy that you're in, but that also plays a large role, is essentially up to you and always was up to you. For the GPL question that you especially had, is it derivative work or not? It's most likely yes. It's rather tricky to answer for hardware projects, and we will have a more licensing discussion later on. But kind of the information that we can put on LibreCores can in no way kind of cover all the legal aspects that come with using this core.
So is there one that you advocate for projects on here? Kind of if people want to make something open source but don't care, I guess, what's your preferred one?
Yes, kind of is there a license that we can advocate? And that's kind of always a tricky thing to be in here. I think in the end, license needs to express what you want your community to be. Do you want kind of just throw it out to the world? Then BSD or MIT license work great, and they also work great for hardware. If you want to draw a fence a bit around, so say I want to get things back from this area of work, things get a bit more tricky, and they get especially more tricky in hardware. Currently mostly used on OpenCourse is LGPL, for example, which is pretty much known to be problematic because it's kind of not tightly defined what it means for hardware. GPL is even, well, probably it's well known what it means, but it's not what you meant that it means. So we will see probably more on Andrew's talk later on. So for now, kind of BSD MIT works great. Everything else, you need to be careful and do a bit of research. Questions over? Whoa.
Hi there. I think that most of us, like appreciate the overall dynamics of open source, and that's the reason we're here sharing with you. But I wanted to get from you, like, what was your main driver to work on Fuzzy and to work on LibreCores? So if how does your vision look like? What would you like to happen in the future, or are you working towards it?
What do I want to happen in the future? Essentially, kind of it's, as in so many open source projects, it's essentially scratch your own itch. I've been doing kind of this when I started out, this open source tiled many core system that we have seen yesterday from Stefan. And there you figure out kind of, oh, you need a bus, and you need a UART, and you need GPIO, and whatever. And kind of for all those components, it's really tricky to get the good, reasonably maintained components together, and not just, oh, now I actually need to spend 4 weeks on UART, which I don't want to spend at all. So all those tiny things add up, and then we figure out this problem is kind of common among many people, and kind of that's what the Fuzzy Foundation started with. And that's kind of the motivation that we had there to essentially scratch our own itch and yeah, do something better then.
Thank you.
All right. Will you continue to pursue to convince the OpenCourse guys to provide you with the code there? The OpenCourse, it's a big repository. Probably there are thousands of hours of work. What will happen with that?
So I'm getting your question as getting the code, so meaning the code that's hosted there, not the code that runs OpenCourse itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the most code that's hosted at OpenCourse is under some form of open source license, so you're kind of legally allowed to just take it and put it somewhere else. This is not the path we want to go in the end, because kind of we very much respect people that write their code and then put it up there. So it's essentially their decision to say, I want it to be abandoned, or I want it to be there, or I want it to move somewhere else. You can get all the code at a site that's called LibreCourse.org or AO or something. So essentially, they took just all the code and put it to GitHub.
Sorry, the question is not targeting, you know, the availability of those cores. Yeah. My main problem is, okay, what if I work and I put effort into building new cores, and it will happen the same thing as with OpenCourse? I mean, yeah. And it will just be dead in some repository.
So essentially, two questions to that. First of all, we decided that we don't want to do a full kind of OpenCourse-like or SourceForge-like integrated platform where we have your repositories there and things like that. So we just use, for example, the GitHub repositories and things like that. So we just do additional listing, provided you additional value, but not kind of silo you into one solution. The other thing is we try everything we can to make sure that whenever we go out of business or lose interest, all the code that runs on LibreCores, all the processors are sufficiently open for somebody else to take over. I don't personally kind of know what other things we could do in this regard. If you have any ideas there, let us know. So, but the intention is to make sure that it's not a silo, but it's kind of an open platform for everybody, and keep that running.
This is the last point. Everyone is talking about developing cores and putting new code there and so on and so forth, about the quality of the individual projects and so on. But no one is talking about how do we verify those. Yeah. Because in the end, something that is not verified, especially in the hardware world, where we don't have the model user as a verifier, like in the software world, right? We talk about nothing, in fact, right? Yes. I mean, how do you make sure, as a LibreCourse, that the code that is checked in the repository, it's at least a little bit verified? I mean, at least smoke tested or whatever, you know. If you look through the projects in OpenCourse, for example, you can see that many of those projects that were checked in there are quite serious, in the sense that they have a design specification, they have some functional specification, and they have usually a test bench. So do you plan to somehow, how to say, facilitate, you know, and encourage people to verify their own code?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and those facilitate and encourage is probably the correctly exact words that we're looking to. So there is no point in kind of forcing anybody kind of to follow some verification process or things like that before they open something to OpenCourse. What we want to make transparent is kind of, does this code follow those best practices? Does it have a test bench? Does it have design specification, documentation, things like that? And that's kind of what we started with, those kind of quality metric things, to give you an impression and to give you the chance to make an informed decision. This is a code I want to use, or this is actually from a person that I know that writes good code. So this is also obviously kind of a very strong indication. Or is this something that I probably rather not use, or just use as a starting point and need to do my full verification on my own, which can also be helpful, of course. So yeah, the things are there to kind of allow people to make informed decisions, but kind of not gate anything right away. Thanks. What's that? Oh yeah, of course, and Olaf just mentioned the LibreCore CI project, which does essentially continuous integration for those of you that are more familiar with software, like a bit more like Travis and things like that, that essentially do automated builds and also run test benches or tests, whatever, if they are available. I think that's also a great step forward to have that tightly integrated and also visible on the site. So this at least synthesizes or runs the test benches, whatever they are in the end. Question over there. Yes. Microphone is coming.
So talking about LibreCore CI, how do you hook up your projects to use that feature?
I think that's pretty much work in progress right now. There will be another talk sometime later today, and I just refer to that, I guess.
Actually, right now.
Right now? Okay, there we go.
Okay.
So that seems to be an... Oh, there's one more question.
Maybe we should take them afterwards.
Okay, I guess we need to move on. So that was the kind of perfect transition there. Thank you. And I will take your question later on. Thanks. And